The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome one and all to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and the X Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and simulcast on Simul TV on the X Zone TV channel. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And for all the broadcast on the Xzone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the program schedule for the Xzone TV channel on Simul TV, just go to www.simultv.com. And in the top of the page in the search engine, type in Xzone. I'd also like to take this time to welcome our newest affiliate in Los Angeles, California, HDTV 55, and also to 10 million new viewers in India. So from everyone here in the X Zone to everyone out there, welcome to the family. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Dr. LAURIE NADEL, and with a dual career in psychology and media, Dr. NADEL is the author of 8 books, including Sixth Sense, Unlocking Your Ultimate Mind Power, which is a 4-time bestseller. Her new book, The 5 Gifts, Discovering Hope, Healing, and Strength When Disaster Strikes, was forwarded by Dan Rather and was voted one of the best books of 2018 by the prestigious Library Journal. Joining me now is Dr. LAURIE NADEL. And Laurie, welcome to the X Zone.
Hey, thank you so much. It's my honor to be here. Thank you.
It's great having you here, Laurie. Tell us more about yourself. You know, you've worked for CBS News, I believe, and then something happened in your life where you kind of changed careers.
Yes, I started my career after college, actually during college, working in journalism, and I kind of fell into TV news, I guess by accident, and enjoyed it tremendously for a long time. Worked in Reuters Television in London, ABC News, CBS News for a decade, and burned out covering the Iran-Contra hearings and ended up with a virus, a kind of Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue virus, which at the time, I guess even now, there's really no conventional medicine for viruses, as we're finding out, you know, with the coronavirus and other illnesses that come up from time to time. So I began to meditate, and I began to study alternative healing, and I recovered in half the time. Most people suffer with that illness for 4 years, and I got better in 2.5 years, and then went on to go back to graduate school and to really change my career to focus on helping people cope with stress, health issues, and post-traumatic stress, which were all things that I myself had been dealing with for quite a while.
You know, I don't think there's anybody listening who didn't hear or see the events of 9/11. Even those people watching the events, even though they weren't in the city of New York or Washington or in Pennsylvania when the events happened, Watching on TV, could that actually cause to have stress?
Oh, there's no question that what they call vicarious trauma or secondary trauma can result from watching disturbing, violent images on the screen, whether it's television or your cell phone. And in fact, there's actually, as part of the psychiatric diagnosis for PTSD, is hours of exposure to disturbing images or video. Now, it used to be that only people who worked in newsrooms or worked in police communications offices or, say, forensic psychologists or detectives who have to watch this footage over and over again were likely to develop vicarious or secondary PTSD. But now 44 million people in the United States are now reported to have PTSD. Only 6 million of them are veterans, which means that it's mostly civilians. And I truly believe that a lot of this is caused by the hours and hours that we all spent, including yours truly, looking at your cell phone, looking at your tablet, looking at your TV, looking at your screen, and you're being bombarded and you're being flashed news images, breaking news, which usually is what we call in the business hard news, usually is death and destruction. Right. And it lodges in the psyche. I mean, it lodges in the subconscious mind, and it creates a sense that we're literally unsafe in our own skin, and it's become a national epidemic.
So what can we do about this? You know, it seems that people cannot live without their handheld devices. It seems that there's a symbiotic relationship that's been developed when it comes to the gadgetry of today. How can we turn things around, or how can we protect the public from what mass media is actually doing?
Well, I think awareness, you know, the number one line of defense for PTSD is information. And I think being able to recognize what the signs of traumatization are, and then to be able to practice some self-care. Of course, the first element of self-care with regard to exposure to television or computer or screen images would be to turn it off, which is what the Red Cross tells people after disasters. You know, if families who the families of people who were working in the area around the World Trade Center were told by the Red Cross to turn it off. Don't keep watching it. If it's disturbing, if you find that you have insomnia, if you find that it's giving you nightmares, sometimes the stories that you see are particularly grisly. Yes. Thinking specifically of Parkland, which happened exactly 2 years ago tomorrow on Valentine's Day. Turn it off and take a few hours. You know, take a cell phone break, take a media break, and do something that is going to help you to chill out. Especially important not to isolate. So talk to somebody, hang out with a friend, hang out with a pet, take a walk, sit in the garden, do anything that gets you away from that kind of hypnotic kind of quality that we go into this trance of watching it again and again and again. And it's really important to recognize I'm feeling sick. I'm feeling nauseous. My hands are shaky. I feel unsafe. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Now it's time to stop, because if you don't turn it off, then it becomes an addiction, and it's going to create other problems down the road.
Why are so many people addicted to the multimedia devices that are so accessible these days?
Well, you know, I like to say that when something is addictive, whether it's sugar or cigarettes or television or any other substance, we crave it because it's immediate, it's available, and it's effective in terms of changing our state. And there's something about staring at screens all day, or I think about people who I know who spend, 4 or 5 hours a day on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. You go into the zone, and the outside world doesn't exist for you. You start to believe, you get kind of sucked into this belief that only what exists on the screen is real, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. And for a lot of people, that is, it gives them some kind of an immediate sense of either gratification or importance, or it's just very seductive. It shows you a world that you think, what do they call FOMO, fear of missing out? It shows you a world that you think or you feel is better than the world that's going on around you in real time. And it's very dangerous for that reason, because there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, which used to be confined to television, which of course is the advertising industry. And the advertising industry is designed to create these very seductive little movies of who you're going to be if you buy an SUV and you live in the Bronx. It's going to take you up to that mountain in Alaska, and you're going to be able to kayak. Or you're going to put on this makeup, and suddenly the person you want to fall in love with is going to be all over you and in love with you. So it feeds, the media feeds these kind of distorted kind of dreams of what people start to believe life is supposed to be, or the fascination with celebrities. And it's very easy to be distracted by that, because it seems like a much more appealing way to live than having to pay your bills or walk the dog or go to work or take out the garbage.
So people would rather live in a land of fantasy than to live in a world of reality. You and I have to take our break. Please stand by. Dr. Laurie NADEL is our special guest this hour. Exonation, www.laurienadel.com. That's LAURIENADEL.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Once again, if you'd like to visit the X Zone Broadcast Network website, xzbn.net, and the X Zone TV channel on simultv.com. Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Laurie NADEL is our special guest, www.laurienadel.com. Before we went to the break, we were talking about how people kind of enter into a world of fantasy when they go into Twitter, Facebook, and, they'd rather be there than actually in the world of reality. I call it the ostrich syndrome. They'd like to put their, they duck their head into the sand, thinking that when they pull their head out of the sand, everything is going to be better. But actually, everything is the same, and in many cases, it's worse. So where does the responsibility lie, in your opinion? Does the responsibility of the mess we're in when it comes to the people that are hooked on the multimedia devices, is it the responsibility of the media, or is it the responsibility of the person who decides to pick up that multimedia device, turn it on, and start watching it?
Well, unfortunately, the media in general has become a kind of juggernaut. It has a life of its own. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It fascinates people. So we can't really control. We can't really control the way the technology is growing, or the access which people have, and in many cases, of course, social media has been a great blessing to people in many different ways. But the addiction is something that only we can take charge of. We're the only ones who can decide that we really need to turn it off and make eye contact with the person who's sitting across the table. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to restaurants and seen young couples, either on dates or young married couples, where each of them is looking at their phone and they're not looking at each other. Or a client who came to me because the man she was in love with had finally proposed to her after 5 years, but she said she was going to break up with him because he didn't put "in a relationship" on his Facebook page. And that's for real. And I tried to explain to her that Facebook wasn't real.
That's right.
But she said that her Facebook friends would judge her, and it would be humiliating for her if she put "in a relationship" and this man who she had wanted to marry for so many years didn't put in a relationship on his Facebook page. So there's a distortion of reality that really hooks people, and we're the only ones who can decide. It's time to turn it off and spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, a certain period of time every day engaging with real people around us. That's what we have control over. Unfortunately, the industry is rampant and it's out of control.
Well, it's out of control because of the demands of the consumer. It's
Right.
supply and demand. Like, as I've been in the media for so many years that I've seen the progression. And I am not.
Right.
I am one that is dead against having the handheld devices in schools. I don't think children should have access to them.
I would agree with
Yeah.
you on that. It's also, it's the advertising industry. I read a few years ago that Mark Zuckerberg had bought the virtual reality company Oculus Rift. And I forget how many, millions or billions of dollars he paid for it. But the reason he bought it was because of the potential to flash subliminal ads directly into your brain when you think that you're walking on the beach or you're battling aliens or whatever you're doing in your virtual reality. You're having ads beamed directly into the brain because it's bypassing conscious, rational thought.
So we're talking about
that's really what drives the industry.
Yeah, but we're also, this is nothing new. This is not subliminal advertising is as old as the hills. So it's a new method of sucking people into buying crap.
That's right, except that it's so subtle that, and on television, it's. There's still laws that make it illegal to flash subliminal ads. But when you get into the wild west of virtual reality or the internet, and so you don't know really what's being flashed at you. Flash frames are coming at you all the time, and the conscious mind has no idea what you're actually looking at if there's a frame of something that's half a second long or a second long, because digital technology makes that possible.
That's right. That's right. And like I was saying, I don't think that handheld devices should be given to children. I don't believe they should be in the schools. Because what happens when we have an EMF and all the cell towers go down? This happened, I think, about 15 years ago here in Ontario. There was an EMF and the entire parts of Ontario and Pennsylvania and New York were blacked out. There was,
it also happened after 9/11. It also happened after Hurricane Sandy.
Right.
There's no cell phone, no television, no communications, no electricity. These events happen, and they're going to be happening with increasing frequency because of changes in the climate, and also, as you're saying, EMF, electromagnetic storms, solar storms, pulses, and God knows what else that humans are doing to interfere with communications.
People, I saw people just totally lost.
Right.
Like, my God, what are we going to do? The phone's not working. This is why, folks. It's great having an internet phone. It's great having a cell phone, but you can't beat the good old copper wire phones that every telephone company offers you. But
that's right.
The convenience of having a cell phone. Wow, you can go anywhere and talk. Look, if you're driving, put your damn cell phone down. When you're walking, put your cell phone down. If you're at a restaurant with your family or whoever, put your cell phone down. I think that people who use their cell phones in public are very ignorant.
Well, they're ignorant and they're rude, but it's also dangerous.
It is very.
It's dangerous to be walking. I think somebody was saying that her doctor told her not to walk and text at the same time. People are ending up in emergency rooms. They're getting hit by cars because they can't stop looking at their phone while they're crossing the street. I mean, it's really kind of taken over in a very dangerous way.
I don't understand why there's not tighter controls on the internet, especially when it comes to the advertising. That's so cheap. Number one. Number two, it does hit a large market, but it's like shooting a shotgun in the air at a duck. Some pellets will hit, some pellets won't. like the FCC and the CRTC say you cannot use subliminal advertising. And yet, the Internet, they just do what they want.
Exactly. There's no regulation. And the one time, I think I think it was after Parkland, I suggested on a closed discussion group of consciousness researchers that if somebody threatens mass murder in a digital space like Facebook, it should be treated the same way as if you shout fire in a crowded movie theater.
Yes.
It should be illegal. And I was blasted because it was a violation of freedom of speech. And I said, if you yell fire in a crowded movie theater or you joke about a bomb in an airport, that is considered a threat to public safety, and you will be arrested, as you should be. And yet there are no regulations that I'm aware of. People threaten violence on the Internet before they commit these horrible acts of mass murder, and there doesn't seem to be any regulation to stop that.
And that, in my opinion, is so wrong. You know, I had a guest on the show many years ago. His name was Pastor Harry Walther. And he said, you know, Rob, the mark of the beast is not 666. It's WWW.
Very clever. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is, it's so insidious. It's kind of like, you know, alcohol. Alcoholism is increasing, but alcohol is legal. Cigarettes kill people, but cigarettes are legal, and WWW is legal, and people are just they become enthralled with it.
Yes,
it takes over their lives, and they really are unaware of the insidious and not so insidious dangers of being hooked up to the Internet 24/7.
And
not a good thing.
And then all the cyberbullying that has been going on. And isn't it funny that a couple of years ago, cyberbullying was all over the place, and now it's kind of been accepted. Well, you know, it's part of the Internet. Oh, come on, give me a break. What's gone wrong with society?
Well, I think that's a big picture question. I personally believe in the United States that a big piece of this is due to the devaluation and deterioration of the importance of education.
Big time.
And that it's much easier to just stare at a screen than learn how to read or learn how to do addition and subtraction manually. If you can just punch up the calculator function on your cell phone. There's been a real devaluation of education, and people no longer think. They just expect to be told what to think. And, of course, politicians are capitalizing on that. That mind control through the Internet, very dangerous moving forward, extremely dangerous.
The dumbing down of society at the hands of technology.
Yes.
Doctor, please stand by.
True.
You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, Dr. Laurie Nadel is our special guest, www.laurienadel.com. And we'll
not the sign of the beast.
No, not the sign of the beast.
Just joking.
www, wonderful woman. We've got to figure this one out. All right. Stand by, Dr. Laurie. Always great talking to you. And X-Zone Nation will both be back on the other side of this news break. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Laurie Nadel is my special guest this hour, www.laurienadel.com. Now, before I get back to Dr. Nadel, one of the main stories that we have in the February edition of the X-Chronicles newspaper is all about the F.A. Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. Guess what, gang? It's all a hoax. It's all fake. And we have proved it beyond the shadow of the doubt in the current edition of the X-Chronicles newspaper. I know a lot of people are going to be upset, but you know what? Sometimes reality kind of gives you a good little shake and says, well, listen, if Mitchell Hedges and his daughter Anna really did find this artifact in Louboutin, Central America, in Belize or British Honduras, how come on the expedition report that Mitchell Hedges himself did, it's never been mentioned? How come in the 1930s, when Mitchell Hedges had his own radio show in New York, it was never mentioned? How come there's no picture of Mitchell Hedges or Anna during the time of the expedition when it was allegedly found? There's no pictures. How come no one on that expedition with F.A. Mitchell Hedges ever talked about it? They never saw it. It's because, gang, Mitchell Hedges and Anna perpetrated a hoax. The crystal skull was actually bought at Sotheby's in London. The crystal skull was manufactured in the 20th century. All these details and much more in the X-Chronicles newspaper, www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. Dr. Laurie NADEL is our special guest, and undoubtedly, these are strange times. You know, not only are we being inundated with false news, and you and I were talking about the subliminal advertising that people are being subjected to, and then the media seems to thrive on all the political indecisiveness. And I believe that the media is actually pulling this country apart.
Well, I would agree with you. I think that there's a polarization that has really gotten much worse in the last 10 years. And when people very often will ask me, what would Walter Cronkite think of the media today?
Oh my God! And
Walter Cronkite would say, make sure that you spell people's names correctly.
That's right.
I mean, there's been a complete deterioration of basic news values, the way I was trained a long time ago.
Sure. But
you always get somebody's name, spell the person's name right, get the date line, the location of the story, make sure that your facts can be checked and double checked, and 90% of what seems to be out there is opinion, and it's masquerading as fact. It's being packaged as news. It's called Fox News, it's called cable news.
Yes.
And there are some facts, but there's a lot more opinion, and it's not carefully separated. It used to be that if you had an opinion piece, somebody, Harry Reasoner was reading an editorial or an essay at the end of the show. There'd be a word, or we call it a font, would be flashing editorial or opinion piece.
Yes.
And it would be separated from the factual news content of the rest of the program. Now the lines are completely blurred, and people don't know where fact begins and ends and where opinion begins and ends. And again, it's very dangerous.
Well, once again, the motto of the media has totally changed, and now it's if it don't bleed, it don't lead. And
That's right.
It's all about numbers. It's all about the number of readers, viewers, or listeners, because the higher the numbers, the more you can get for advertising.
That's yes. It's excuse me. It's we call it it's a negative cycle that keeps feeding itself. Anyone who's seen I think Bombshell, some of the other movies that have come out about how the very crass and commercial and sexualized nature of how news is packaged and sold. I think that level of corruption is like yes, sex has always been used to sell movies and to sell to sell advertising on television, but it's just reached a point where there's really no attempt to to separate out, okay, this is fact,
Yeah.
and this is opinion, and this is advertising. I mean, the ads are kind of they kind of filter in through the reporting, because the reporting is largely opinion, and it product placement. You know, if you're watching a TV show and you see a can of Pepsi sitting on a table, I mean, that's an ad.
That's right.
For which Pepsi has paid a lot of money
Yeah.
to have that can of Pepsi sitting on that table. So it's insidious, it's invasive, and it's so ubiquitous. It happens all the time, everywhere, in so many different areas of television, of movies, of on the internet, that we're not even aware that we're being plugged and we're being manipulated and we're being sold to all the time. Anytime you look at your screen, someone's trying to sell you something.
That's right. It's 24-hour advertising cycles. It's funny because years ago, not that long ago, the Canadian and the American government put a halt to having psychic shows or psychic advertising or infomercials on at a certain time.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, because it was affecting people in such a negative manner. They said that by the people who would the programmers would put the infomercials on at between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, when TV time is the
Right.
cheapest. But that is when people who cannot sleep because of the negativity that is going on in their life, the unhappiness, the financial problems, marital problems, are awake. They turn on TV. There's a psychic hotline saying, we can solve your problems. We can tell you
Right.
what you're doing wrong. And it took long enough for the government to say, whoa, this is all wrong. The FCC said you can't do that. The CRTC said you can't do that, and they were taken off. And yet...
But they will advertise pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
And here I had a friend visiting from the Netherlands, and he actually threw his shoe at the television when he saw some of the pharmaceutical ads in the middle of the evening news. And he said, that's illegal in the Netherlands, and it should be illegal here. And people walk into their doctors and they say, I want the purple pill,
Yep.
I want the pink pill, I want this. It's not, it's not like going out to buy milk. I mean, it's something that your doctor is supposed to tell you what medication you need for your condition.
And yet how many
people... It should not
people...
be allowed to be a consumer product that gets advertised. Patients are not consumers. We're people who need specific expert medical help when we're sick.
And yet these people go on the internet and try and make self-diagnoses.
Right, Dr. Google.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to get back on track here, and because I'd really like to talk to you about your book, The Sixth Sense, Unlocking Your Ultimate Minds. It's a classic. You were the first to report on the Pentagon's secret psychic espionage program.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
And it was very interesting. I had first interviewed Edgar Mitchell, who was the astronaut who had a kind of mystic experience in space where he realized that he was connected to a higher intelligence. And from that epiphany, he came back to Earth and he started the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is a very prestigious and probably was the first scientific organization that did research into consciousness, non-local phenomena, what we call psychic phenomena.
Yeah.
And it was actually the president of that organization who told me in 1988 that there was a secret psychic espionage program. And yet when I started to ask people about it, researchers and scientists, they all looked at me, and I'd been a journalist for many years, and I know when people were lying.
Right.
They looked at me and they said, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, no, that program has been shut down. And I thought, these people are lying through their teeth. But, I'm a young mom, and I'm an independent writer. I'm not working for the New York Times or 60 Minutes, and I don't want to disappear down a dark road. So I'm just going to let them lie. But the program was going on actively, was declassified in 1996, and I understand that it's still going on, but they change the name of it from time to time, and it's kind of buried deep in different levels of military and intelligence work.
We've had the founder of that that project. Russell Targ on the show many times.
Yeah.
And then we've had Major Ed Dames on the show many times
Yes.
talking about
Yes, I
remote
interviewed
viewing.
both of them. Yes.
It's
Brilliant men.
They are. And then, the stories that they tell, all right, hey, the Russians were doing it, the Chinese were doing it. Why shouldn't the Americans do it? And when does it become so necessary that the public knows everything about what the government is doing? If the public knows everything, is the public itself putting the risk of national security in the forefront because of their curiosity? We'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Dr. Laurie NADEL is my guest, and Laurie's website is www.laurienadel.com. The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, returns on the other side of this break as we wrap up another hour from our broadcast center and studios where? Niagara, Ontario, Canada. And welcome back, everyone. Dr. Laurie NADEL is our special guest, www.laurienadel.com. Laurie, in today's society, we were talking about your book, Sixth Sense, Unlocking Your Ultimate Mind Power, where you actually were the first person to report on the Pentagon's secret psychic espionage program called remote viewing. When does it come to a point where the public has the right to know certain things, but when it gets to the point of, for example, storming Area 51, where they actually endanger national security? We didn't see this prior to the Internet. Does the Internet bolster the crowd mentality and the stupidity that goes along with it?
Well, I think absolutely. I mean, I think, the number of people who say to me, I saw it on the Internet, so it must be true. I go, okay. I think there's really, to kind of pick up what you were talking about before, I think that even with all the exposure that we have to information, false news, false information, subliminal programming, propaganda, I think that when it comes to what's really going on, maybe we know 3% of what's really going on. And I think a lot of what we're fed is designed to excite a kind of crowd mentality because it distracts us from really finding out what's going on behind the scenes. And I agree with you. I don't want to know what's going on behind the scenes because my understanding is that there is a lot going on that the public should really not have any idea of.
And people are probably saying, "Oh, listen to the two of them." People in the media. They're trying to cover. No, it's not cover. This is the reality, gang. This is the real world. You just can't bury your heads in your electronic gadgets and live in a world of fantasy or virtual reality for most of your day and then pop your heads out for a little while and think that you're able to comprehend what's really happening in the real world. It doesn't work that way. I've been doing the show now for 30 years, Laurie.
Wow.
5 nights a week, 4 guests a night. And in the 30 years that I've been doing this show, nothing within the world of the paranormal has changed. Nothing. Nobody has found Bigfoot. Nobody has found a crashed UFO. Nobody has found the Loch Ness Monster. And the list goes on and on and on. People keep asking me, well, Rob, if that's your attitude, why do you keep doing the show? And the answer is very simple. If the truth is out there, I want to find it. But
yeah, absolutely.
That's what journalism is about.
And I think that you're talking about the beginning of your show. I think it's really important to explore the unknown and expect the unexpected. It's really important. Carl Jung said that intuition is the ability to see around the corner, and in order to see or sense around the corner, we have to ask a lot of questions, and we have to be open and curious to phenomena that we really cannot understand through our logical mind and our 5 physical senses. And I think that can only be. I think we only understand a fraction of it,
yes,
but we can experience it, and once we experience it, of course, it changes us.
Something that has happened over the last 20 years, the New Age movement has become much more popular, and they now are using buzzwords like quantum physics, quantum mechanics to try and justify what their beliefs are. You know, we can't prove it, but quantum physics and quantum mechanics say it's possible. So therefore, if it's possible, it's real. No.
Right.
No, that's not how it works, gang.
Well, I think it was Russ Targ who told me when I interviewed him for Sixth Sense that the whole idea of quantum non-locality and Bell's theorem and quantum mechanics was just, it was a convenient way for people to understand what we really can't understand.
That's right.
With our logical minds, and that really those are really not explanations for the ability to know something without the conscious use of reasoning, or to be able to correctly draw and identify a target in a remote location where there's been no sensory input whatsoever about what that target is. I mean, the mind is capable of so much more than we're aware of, and I think that's really to be a pure explorer of the mind, I think is really one of the things that keeps me going, and it really was what motivated me to explore this phenomena called the Sixth Sense, or called intuition, at a time when there was no New Age section of the bookstore. When Sixth Sense came out, it was the only book that looked at a biological model. It looked at multiple intelligences. It looked at the science of intuition and how people in different walks of life trusted their sixth sense, so that it grounded it, and it helps people to understand that this is a very real mental phenomena, just like learning a language or having mathematical ability. It's something that we all have. Some people have more of it than others, or some people have a more natural talent, but it's natural, and it's just as important as learning how to add and subtract, or learning how to play a musical instrument.
It's a phenomenon at this point because the science that we have today cannot explain it. But when the explanation is revealed and the man behind the curtain is identified, the phenomenon will no longer exist. It'll be fact. And I think that as long as people look at the possibility that, oh my God, I'm going to shake a lot of people's worlds right now, Laurie, when I say this, that Albert Einstein may have been wrong, because it could be found out maybe tomorrow, next week, a year from now, that one of his formulas were wrong, that he was wrong.
Right.
It'll shake the foundations of the scientific community who put so much faith in today's knowledge, that I applaud the new scientists who are actually going beyond that and saying, well, what if?
Right.
Yeah.
What if? And of course, Einstein, completely upended the Newtonian model.
Exactly.
And the model of what we call reductionism, that says that only what can be reduced to physical matter is real.
Yep.
And the new scientists, which at the time that I was researching my book, I think they made up maybe 2 or 3% of the scientific community, were asking those what-if questions.
Yeah.
They were asking the questions about consciousness and psychokinesis, and is it possible to influence the outcome of, say, a random number generator using the mind? And the numbers that were generated in the Princeton Anomalies Engineering Lab proved that, yes, it is possible for the mind to influence a random number generator, but nobody knows how. Nobody knows why.
Yep.
And there's really no science to explain it.
Well, it's just like telekinesis. Poltergeist activity. We know that poltergeist has nothing to do with a noisy spirit. It's caused by an agent. who's going through puberty 9 times out of 10. And this was according to Hans Holzer, who I had the opportunity of talking to many, many years ago.
Wow.
So this has come to be understood. But people,
well, I think it's kind of gone full circle, because if we look at ancient spiritual traditions,
yes,
we look at Eastern religions, we look at even South American mystical traditions or indigenous people, there is a basic belief that there is a spiritual realm which is invisible, but which interacts with our physical realm all the time. And here in North America, we tend to have this very rational view that if we cannot measure it through our 5 physical senses, then it's not real.
That he did. Why? Because academia does not want to say, you know what, we were wrong. Even though the monks, right, the Irish monks were in the Americas, even though people from the Middle East were trading with the Indians of the Great Lakes, we don't want to admit that. So
right,
if they're not willing to admit something that is so insignificant compared to the findings that are being found today, it's going to be a long time, Laurie. But I just want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. We'll have to have you back because you're one heck of a fine lady. And do the world a favor. Keep doing up the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And to you, Rob, it's really a great pleasure to be here. And I thank your audience and listeners. And I wish everyone a very happy Valentine's Day.
And happy Valentine's Day to you, Doctor. Exonation, our guest this hour has been Dr. Laurie Nadel. www.laurienadel.com. The name of the book that